Hey everyone, I'm just going to get this video up quickly before the gold medal game starts. So in this video, I'm going to talk about an article that the Seattle Times posted. The author actually brought up some really good points. And to a certain extent, I actually agree with about 80% of it, which is rare for a US publication. But there are still some things that the US media still does not understand about Canadians and why we are not coming down to the United States. So I'm going to point that out in today's video. Now, the backdrop you're looking at today is another one from Snowbot from our Discord server. And Snowbot took this one from Horseshoe Bay in West Vancouver. Now, I'm going to guess that this ferry is going to Bowen Island just because of the size of it. But regardless, thanks Snowbot for posting these in the Discord server. And if you're interested in joining the Discord server, I think we just broke the 1,000 member mark. And we have lots of GTL members from all over the world. And also members from Josh's channel, The Enemy From Within. So if you're interested in joining and chatting with like-minded people, or even posting up your pet pictures, or links, or anything else, the link will be in the description below to join the Discord server. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything. I've met plenty of community members on both sides of the border and around the world that I now talk to on a daily basis. So check it out if you're interested. Now, before I start, there's a major thunderstorm going on right now in Kuala Lumpur. I don't know if you guys are hearing it in the mic or not. But what I'm noticing is that the thunderstorms here, they last for about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, and then it's gone. It'll be perfectly sunny after that. So if you guys are hearing rumbling in the background, it's thunder. But it also means that the co-host is not going to be around, because I'm going to bet good money that she's hiding somewhere. All right, let's get started with the first article, titled, Psychological McNugget First Wall on Washington's Border Has Repelled a Million Trips. Now, normally I just skim through the article and point out the important stuff, but I'm actually going to read out the whole thing this time. Because if I don't, you're not really going to hear or feel the tone of this article. So let's hope my dyslexia doesn't kick in. Okay, so this article is created by someone named Dan Westneat from the Seattle Times. There are physical walls built around the country to keep people out, like the hundreds of miles of black paint fence down on the Mexican border. Then there are psychological walls. Len Saunders is an attorney at the Washington border town of Blaine. The other day, he was driving home after meeting a client in British Columbia when he ran into such a barrier. I hadn't seen this before in 25 years I've been living here, he said. When he drove up to the Pacific Highway border station, there wasn't a single car waiting to go across. On a Friday afternoon, he had all the passport lanes to himself. He sent photos through his windshield to prove it. There's been an absolute collapse in the Canadians crossing over, Saunders said. I don't think people realize how bad it's gotten. There's days like this now where you come up to the border, and it feels like it's been closed down. It turns out this wall blocked more than 1 million Canadian trips into Washington state last year. To all my fellow British Columbians back home, well done, and we're definitely making an impact. Now moving on. It was well documented last spring how furious Canadians were about the President McNugget's threat to annex their country as a 51st state. They went elbows up, booing the US national anthem, boycotting American booze, and generally writing off states for shopping trips or summer vacations. To Americans, it probably feels like the conflict has died down, but crossing data shows our neighbor is seething. Now, I highlighted this part for a reason, and let me repeat it. To Americans, it probably feels like the conflict has died down. Now, I kind of agree with this comment because unless you're a US citizen that owns a business that relies on tourism, the average US citizen isn't even going to notice. And I hate to say it, they're probably too self-centered to even notice that we're not there. But if you own the Chevron station in this photo right now, you're definitely going to notice that Canadians are not there. Now, this photo was sent in by G, and I did a previous interview with him, and he's been helping me to get photos from Whatcom County as well as Skagit County. And he talked to the owner, and the owner said his business is down significantly because there's no Canadians. So he's an example of a US citizen that understands what's going on and notices the difference. But unfortunately, there's US citizens that really don't care and have no idea what the impact is of the Canadians not visiting their state. Gee, if you're watching this, I'd appreciate you sending this over. And feel free to send over photos anytime. Back to the article. Cars with Canadian plates coming southbound into Northwest Washington dropped 39% in the first 365 days of the Orange McNuggets term. January 20th, 2025 through January 19th, 2026, as compared to the same time span a year earlier. There are 4 crossings in Northwest Washington, at the I-5 Peace Arch, Pack Highway, Linden, and Sumas. Collectively, we saw about 925,800 fewer Canadian-plated cars entering the state prior to the year, according to the crossing data kept by the Whatcom Council of Governments. Assuming a typical average of 1.3 people per car, it adds up to 1.2 million Canadians not visiting. That's just through these 4 land border points. It doesn't count for plane or ferry trips not taken. The trust has been broken, Blaine Mayor Mary Lou Stewart said, predicting that the Canadian frost from the US could last for generations. Now, I think the Blaine mayor is finally starting to get it. I mean, they're on the front lines, and they're the first city that we cross into when we cross the border. Now, what we just heard is rare from a US official, because we know that other US officials across their country are always going to spin it in a way saying that this is just a slight dip, or a phase, or that they'll be back because we love the US so much. So it is kind of refreshing to hear a US official acknowledge that this could take a generation to fix. Now, let me read this next part. You're going to love it. It might be getting worse. So far through the first half of February, crossings are off by another 13% from last February, when the Orange McNugget was in full roar about taking over the country. Now, we're not talking about 13% from 2024 or before the Orange McNugget got into the office. We're talking about 13% from last year. And last year, February, is when the downturn already started. So factor in the 29% drop last year in February, and then tack on another 13% from last year's drop. I think it's safe to say that this is going to be an ongoing trend. Now, this is just talking about British Columbia and Washington. There's no mention at all of any other border states and how they're doing. But I would imagine they're having similar results. I'm just waiting for the haters to say, oh, it's only down 13% this year. I mean, come on, be realistic. We know we're going to see those messages. US plated cars crossing at roughly the same rates before the Orange McNugget took office. So this is a one-way wall. It also probably isn't due to the other economic factors, like weak Canadian dollar, as the loonie exchanges for about the same as it did now in 2024, 73 cents to the US dollar. Holy crap. An actual honest evaluation about the exchange rate. Danny Westnet, I applaud you for actually making a statement in your article saying that it has nothing to do with the exchange rate. An international poll this past week summed it up. As a political headline read, look how much Canadians hate the United States right now. I did a video on this one a few days ago. The poll surveyed the US, Canada, the UK, France, and Germany. When asked what country in the world is the greatest threat to peace, a majority of the responses in the countries picked Russia. The lone exception? Canada, which pointed the finger at us. Of course we did. Russia isn't threatening to annex Canada. The United States is. But it's not just about the annexation. It's also the disrespect that we're getting from many of the citizens in the United States. Canadians don't see the Orange McNuggets in America as merely an annoyance, Politico reported. They consider the superpower next door to be the world's greatest threat to peacetime. Saunders is a dual citizen, born in Canada and naturalized here. He said most Canadians that he meets with daily in his law practice fall into two buckets. They're either scared to come here because of the stories of Canadians getting dragged off into detention or the ICE shootings in Minneapolis, he said. Or they're just pissed off. That's about it, scared or pissed off. If you want my opinion, I think those two buckets should be merged together, at least for the GTL community. Because I think if you're watching this video right now, we share the same sentiment. It's not so much the Orange McNugget's constant threat of higher tariffs. Recently, the Orange McNugget said that he'd whack Canada with a preposterous 100% tariffs if the country made any deal with China, even though Canada already announced a preliminary deal with China. Will he tone down now that the US Supreme Court has thrown out his king-like tactics? I think we all know the answer to that. Of course not. Canadians say they're more hacked off by the attacks on their sovereignty, and even more than that, by the boorish disrespect. I 100% agree with this. If it was just about the tariffs, I would probably be still going to the United States. That's just a realistic thing. In his first term, there were still tariff threats, and whatever else he did. But I still went to the United States. But it crossed the line for me when he started threatening my country. They need us, the Orange McNugget said of Canadians last spring. We really don't need them. Why be that obnoxious? A year ago, I wrote an open letter to Canadians saying that there wasn't much left to say except I'm sorry. I got reprinted around Canada and several thousand Canadians responded, which was gratifying. Better to talk than just glare. They didn't accept the apology, as I didn't imagine they would. Their main clapback was, fine, you're sorry, but what the bleep are you going to be doing about it? It's a question that gets to the core of the problem, which is that we Americans collectively chose this. Canadians have continued to write me, wondering what in the world happened to us. We are at that dark juncture where things have gone terribly wrong, wrote Lexi Angelo of Alberta in January when the Orange McNugget was on his deranged bender about invading Greenland. Americans have done nothing. Now I'm glad I'm not the only one that agrees with Lexi. And Lexi's statement, Americans have done nothing, really ties into my rant that I had in my last video. If you guys didn't watch my last video, I basically ranted about US citizens blaming me for causing hate when they're doing the best they can to resist their administration. Well, that's great that you're doing it, and I applaud you for that. But what about the rest of your fellow citizens that are doing absolutely nothing? The ones that are apathetic about everything that's going on right now and just going about their day like nothing's wrong. You know, the US citizens that are like, if it doesn't affect me, I don't care. Lexi sees it, I do, and I'm sure thousands of my viewers do as well. That still sounds weird for me to say. I actually have people that watch my videos. That's crazy. Anyways, the article is almost done. I'll try to get through this as soon as possible. Moving on. Canadians look across the border and see a population of easily distracted fools, she said. It's been a full year, she added. And Danny, you are the only one who has ever apologized. That isn't so. There's a group, for example, that has gathered at the Peace Arch in Blaine, weather be damned, every Saturday for nearly a year to welcome Canadians and ease tensions. It's drowned out by Orange McNugget megaphones. Plus, American attention has shifted to other fights, such as about immigration enforcement, where citizens have done a lot more than nothing. We've all found this maddening because you don't know what to do, Saunders says. You can only say we love the Canadians so many times. Now, there's a few things that I disagree with on both Danny as well as Lexi's statements. First with Lexi, when she says you are the only one who has ever apologized. This is incorrect because I have thousands of US citizens watching my videos that do apologize as well. But on the flip side, I do have US citizens saying that once they take over my country, they're going to look for me. I'm not shitting you. In regards to Danny's statement, there are people in the US that are trying to make a difference. I understand that and I acknowledge it as well. But it's still a very, very small minority. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but 77 million voted for the Orange McNugget. 75 million voted for Harris. 90 million didn't vote at all. And when I compare it to the last big push for a protest or a resistance, there were 7 million US citizens that went to the No Kings protest across the country. 7 million out of a population of 340 million. It's still a drop in the bucket. So Danny, yes, there are US citizens that are trying to make a difference. But the problem is that you still have way too many people that don't give a shit. And last paragraph of this article. It is truly astounding that one man's out-of-the-blue fixation ended up repelling 1 million visits to Whatcom County and Washington State this past year. And for what? What has anyone gotten out of it? It's heedless damage all the way down. The border crossing stats don't lie. It's a unique wall, built in an instant, yet as durable as it is invisible. I suspect it'll take a lot more apologizing from people who actually matter, like future theoretical US government officials, if we want to start tearing it down. Well, Danny, you got some of it right. But it's not just one man's out-of-the-blue fixation. It's also the 77 million people who got him there. And Washington State has part of those 77 million as well. Now, I have to give Danny from the Seattle Times credit, because he did mention things that we've never heard before, basically stating that it's not about the exchange rate, and even reporting that, hey, this is going to take generations. Now, I know it was the Blaine mayor that said that, but it was actually publicized. But these things are things that I have never seen from a US media outlet. And I read and watch a lot of bullshit these days. So Danny, if you're watching this, I really appreciate you mentioning these things. It does mean a lot to me as a Canadian. But there is one thing that you are missing. Everything that we're going through right now can't be pinned on one person. And that one person is the guy who's sitting in the White House. But the responsibility also lies on every single one of those US citizens that voted that guy in. But not only that, the ones who couldn't even be bothered to vote. So I don't think the attention should be on how we get the Canadians back to the United States, because we're simply not going to go, unless a lot of us see improvement. And the only way, in my opinion, to see improvement is to get all of your fellow US citizens who are apathetic about everything. Get them off their ass and get them out to protest and do stuff. Because if they don't care, then why should we care about repairing a relationship with the United States? All right, everyone, that's all I got for today's video. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian point of view, or even an international point of view, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button below so you're notified of my future videos. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.